guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, "Squatters Park on My Property and Block My Garage, I Teach Them a Lesson." TLDR. Squatters take over empty house next door and become my new neighbors. One day they get a car and park it is blocking my garage. I have it towed so I can get to work since I don't know who it belongs to. The next day they are at my house screaming at me and telling me that I am going to have to pay to get the car back. I refuse and they admit on camera by mistake to being squatters. I get my revenge when I use it to get them taken away from the house that didn't belong to them in the first place. The house next to mine was vacant for a good while since the housing market here was really bad at the time. I guess once it had been left empty long enough it was only a matter of time before people started living there one way or another. At first, I actually thought that we had new neighbors because these people were not the first thing that would jump into my mind when I thought of squatters. I don't know if I have TV to thank for this, but when I imagined squatters, I had a certain mental image where I could pick them out of a crowd. These just looked like normal neighbors that walked out in clean clothing and talked to everyone. They didn't seem to be hiding anything. When I saw their lights out at night sometimes, I would just assume they were out and liked to save on electricity. After a while though the signs that they were squatters became more and more obvious. They didn't care about maintaining the property and once even asked to borrow my hose, which is when I realized they didn't have water. Still, I was a firm believer of if it doesn't concern me to just stay out of it. I wasn't going to pointlessly get myself involved with these people squatting next door. As far as neighbors go, they weren't the worst and as far as I could tell they were at least cleaning their clothing and themselves. Things slowly devolved over time though, especially once these squatter neighbors ended up getting a car. I don't know what they did to get their money and I have a good feeling I don't want to. It was enough for them to get a car though and I learned that it was their car in a very confusing way. It was 6 in the morning, and I was as usual a zombie getting into my car to go to work. I park in my garage and when I went to back out, I found that it wasn't possible. They had parked their car in the weirdest way that I have ever seen in my life. The best way to describe it would be that they parked diagonally with half their car on my property and the other half by the curb. Obviously, I had no way to get out and this car was beyond illegally parked. I had never seen this car before, and I wasn't about to go knocking on doors at 6 a.m. to try and find out who knew something about this car. My guess at the time was somebody had a guest stay over and they were so drunk they didn't notice how they parked, or they just couldn't drive. Either way it wasn't happening, so I called for a tow truck because the car was on my property without permission after all. I was an hour late for work and my boss wasn't happy with me and I was having too much of a brain fog to even take a picture to show him. So, I was in a bad mood the entire day about this stupid car and how it got me in trouble at work. Now the answer didn't come until the next day, which was a weekend, meaning I was actually home. Someone started banging on my door so aggressive that my cat jumped straight up in the air and sprinted across the house. He usually just sleeps and doesn't care about anything, but he clearly sensed something I wasn't able to. Standing at my doorstep were my squatter neighbors and they looked furious. I didn't even put 2 and 2 together and think it could have been their car because I thought they didn't have one. I didn't even have time to be confused because the guy just started screaming the moment he saw my face. "Squatter. What the hell happened to my car?" "Me. Your car was." He cut me off. "Squatter. I know it was right here exactly. I came back yesterday and boom it was just gone." "Me. Yes, I saw your car in the morning when I." He cut me off again. "Squatter. See, that's why I left it here. I knew you would see it and keep an eye on it and now it's just gone." "Me. Let me finish please. It was blocking my garage and I couldn't get my car out to go to work. So, I called the company and had it towed away since it was parked illegally and trapping me in." "Squatter. Why didn't you just come and tell me?" "Me. I have never seen this car before. I had no way to know it belonged to you. Look, if you call that number, I am sure that they still have your car, and you can go get it back. I have no idea why this man though I would keep an eye on it without even asking me and thinking that was a good place to leave the car. He kept talking about how since I was the one that caused the mess, I needed to pay whatever fee it would cost to get the car back. I wasn't doing that, and it caused this guy to go on a huge rant. He was insulting me like crazy while the woman who I assume was his wife just stood there and watched. When he lost his breath, she started in about how I think I am better than them because I got suckered into actually paying for my house. What they didn't know was that I had a porch camera that picked up audio. So not only was I not going to pay a cent to get them their car, but I was also going to get rid of them. I know the squatter laws vary all over the place, but the biggest hoop to jump through here is being able to prove that they don't actually pay to live there. So having that video with them basically admitting they are squatting is like digital gold. I also may have told the other neighbors about the crazy squatters living next to me and how I found out they were staying illegally and went to my door yelling at me. So multiple complaints got called in, and with my evidence the sheriff was soon escorting them off the premises. I have no idea what happened to their car, but I just wish all the horrible neighbors in these kinds of stories could end this way. If he didn't want to act like a crazy person, he might have gotten away with living next door for a long time before getting the boot. After the stunt he pulled with blocking me in and then demanding I pay for the car fees I wasn't dealing with him. They will probably go and find somewhere else to squat, and I just hope they don't mess with any other innocent people. I understand that times are hard, and housing is more expensive than it really needs to be. But if you are doing something that requires you to keep a low profile, then maybe getting your car towed and screaming at the neighbor isn't the best way to do that. The next story is titled, "Woman Parks in My Spot, then informs me that I'm in her spot when I decide to park next to her." So, the complex I live in has assigned parking in both shaded and not shaded spots. My spot is between two other assigned spots and is shaded. The spot to my left is also shaded, the spot to my right is not. The car that parks in the unshaded spot is a bigger SUV type of car and it's white. I never really paid attention to the exact make or model though. Yesterday, I got home and there is a white SUV type car in my spot. The unshaded spot next to me is open. I figure it must just be the neighbors and decide I'll just pull into the unshaded spot next to my usual spot. I was only going to be home for a short amount of time before leaving to pick up my boyfriend, so I figured I'll just park in their spot for the time being, and if they're still there when I come back then I'll ask them to move. Once I pull in, I realize there are people in the car, just sitting there, and also wonder if it is in fact the same car that's usually next to me, but I wasn't too sure. I still really didn't want to bother these people and I just wanted to get inside, so I gathered my things, and as I'm getting out of my car, a woman from the driver's side comes around and asks if I'm Carla. I don't know who that is, so I just say no awkwardly, and she sort of laughed and was like, seriously? I guess she thought I was being sarcastic or something when I said I wasn't Carla. Then she went on to say, well, that's my spot, I'm just waiting for my realtor, so I simply pointed in the direction of her car and said, and that's mine. Then she just said, ooh haha, let's switch then. It was just so hot not being in the shade, so I get back in my car and switch. I went up to my place afterwards and was thinking about it a little more, and it was just kinda weird. Like, I at least recognized the color and size of the vehicle next to me, but my car wasn't familiar to her at all. Also, how are you gonna park in a spot that isn't yours and then immediately tell someone they're in your spot without knowing who they are? When I left to get my boyfriend, the car was gone. But it was there again when we got back home. They were in the unshaded spot, not my spot. I told him about it when we got inside, and he was pretty annoyed and is convinced she doesn't actually have a spot yet, as apparently her car isn't the same as the car that's been parking there. Which makes sense in some ways but also leads me to more questions. Like, why say the unshaded spot is yours when you don't even have a spot yet? The whole situation was rather strange. The last story is titled, Karen tries to steal solar panel and her son assaults me. TL. Doctor. Karen lets her little kid run into an active worksite. She catches an attitude, later has her older son try to steal a solar panel. He punches me in the chest and now they both have criminal charges against them. You know, I've been lucky with not encountering Karens up until recently. Honestly, I thought the internet over-exaggerated about these crazy entitled people. I came to the sad truth, these people do exist, and my faith in humanity dropped just a tad more. And just a little more as I'm typing this, coming to the realization some these people are raising the next generation. Anyways, I work in the solar industry, mainly residential, as a service technician. Whenever something goes wrong with a solar PV system, I'm the guy they send out to fix it. I've been doing this long enough to have the knowledge and skill to complete an entire installation by myself. With roof pitch and module count within reason, that is. Anyways, I went out with one of the crews for an installation as they were short a few guys. So, myself and 2 of the other technicians I work with volunteered to help them out. Seemed like a pretty standard job. 40 plus panels, not a steep roof. Okay, we should be in and out timing permitting. We're finished and back at the shop by 4 to 5 p.m. So, we arrive at the house as what looked to be a pretty rich neighborhood. Homeowner greeted us and even offered to grab us all breakfast. It was a good day so far. So, we set up an exclusion zone to prevent anyone from coming too close to the house as equipment, tools, etc. will fall off the roof. I'm on the ground working on building the electrical portion of the system. I've got my music playing, all is good, I've got myself in a good rhythm. I then noticed a child, could have been no older than 7, dart past the red tape we had put up and head toward a ladder to the roof and try to start playing on it. Like a human being with common sense, I ran over and told the kid he couldn't play on this, and that red tape was up so he couldn't get hurt. And the moment you've all been waiting for, Karen appears. Man, she had it all, the haircut, the sunglasses, and she had the worst spray tan I've personally seen. It's summer, people just go and get some sun, damn. Karen. Don't talk to my son like that, he just wants to play with your tools. Me. Ma'am, I can't allow him to play with our tools, I also can't have him or yourself past that red tape. We put it up for your safety. Karen. Oh, he'll be fine, just tell your workers to not drop anything. Me, who had just lost a couple brain cells from her response. I can tell them to not drop anything all day, but that doesn't exclude the fact, accidents happen, and we cannot risk anyone who is a non-worker to be hurt. Now please leave this as an active work site. Karen. I can do as I please and so can my son. We're friends with these people and they let my son play in their yard. You should take a better direction at talking to potential customers you know. Me. Ma'am, until I have site plans for an installation on your house, how I speak to you is not a concern I have. If I sound cross, I apologize, but I have now told you twice that I cannot have you past the red tape. So, I am asking once again, please take your son and leave before either of you get hurt. This is an active work site. She grabbed her child arms and stormed off, while also tearing off a section of the exclusion zone tape and storming over to her house 2 doors down. I stood by our trailer to take a breather and began chain smoking. I try not to get stressed out so much, being my job is already stressful as it is, but I have zero patience for people with no common sense, especially if they're a parent. A little while later, panels are prepped, roof is based out, for anyone who knows about solar installations. We used a reckless system instead of actual rails. We're now just finishing up the electrical before placing the panels into position. I'm running between the basement and the outside area. I get back to outside, punching in some wires, when I hear one of my guys yelling from the roof. Hey kid, what are you doing? That immediately caught my attention as I thought the little kid had run past the exclusion zone tape once again. But my eyes caught a guy running down the road with a solar panel in tow. He thankfully wasn't very fast without he was holding the panel. I darted over to this kid with one of our solar panels and attempted to rip it from his hands, while simultaneously trying not to let it hit the ground. I was able to get my hands on it, but this kid actually put up a fight and tossed the solar panel that put me in an awkward position, and he landed a full-on punch to my chest. Not gonna lie, it did knock the wind out of me little. But I went into full self-defense mode. The kids wanted to take another shot at me since I didn't completely go down. I immediately put him on the ground without throwing any punches. I didn't know how old this kid was and I didn't want to get into trouble for hitting a minor, but I wasn't about to let this kid continue to hit me. I'm thankful I have a little background in amateur mixed martial arts and a police officer dad and older brother who've taught me stuff over the years. So, I had the kid down on the ground pinned and out comes Karen running, screaming like a banshee. The typical "I'm calling the cops. And you just assaulted my son." I really asked myself if this was happening. Me. Your son was stealing a solar panel and punched me in the chest. I had to defend myself. Karen. I told him to grab the solar panel. My neighbor said I could take one and try it out and see how I like it. At this point my guys are at my aid and I tell them to call the cops and keep Karen away from me. As we wait for the cops to show up, this orange-skinned lunatic is ranting how she's going to sue all of us and blah blah blah. Cops arrived about 10 minutes later. I removed myself from the kid and the cops split us all up to take our statements and such. Karen went with her story about how her neighbor said she could borrow a solar panel and try it out. Now even if he did say that, which he didn't, you can't just let someone take a solar panel because they still belong to the company. Most people who buy solar, finance the panels and pay them off over the course of the next couple years. Works a lot like financing a car. It gets to the point where the cops ask if I want to press charges for the assault. The guy whose house we were installing had a security camera system and caught the incident all on tape, so I gladly say yes. No idea when the court proceedings are going to be taking place. I honestly just want this over and done with. Edit. Just to clear up some questions in the comments. Found out the kid who attacked me was 18, legally an adult, so charges are being filed against him. The homeowner was present during most of the ordeal, and he told us he's never talked to that woman in his life, and I have no idea what Karen's intentions were with the solar panel. If she planned to just slap it on her house, she's as stupid as she is entitled. Thanks for listening.